Good morning, everybody. It's 11 o'clock. So good morning in the West and good afternoon in the East. I'm Rosemary Bray McNatt, president of Starr School for the Ministry. I'm so glad you could be with us on day 2 of our Facebook Live week here at Starr King. Welcome to you. Good morning, Zeb. Wherever you are and however you're connecting with us, we're glad to see you. I'm in my dining room. Every now and then over the corner, you'll see people walking by, most likely Bob. And if we're good, the dog won't bark. Lucille gets a little excited. I'm really glad that you've signed on. I'm really glad that we have this time together. It's a great way to connect at a time when connection is short supply in some ways. So I'm very glad to see you here. I wanted to make sure to once again point you to the Starr King page that directs you to our response to the coronavirus issues. Head on over to Starr King's website, which is sksm.edu, and that'll point you toward what we're doing and how we're continuing to monitor the situation. As I told some of you yesterday, I'm really glad that Starr King has been a leader in distance education for almost 20 years now. As I said, we started teaching our first course online in 2001. And in fact, someone was on yesterday who was a member of that class, which was lovely. I didn't get a chance to talk to her, but I'm hoping that we connect again before the week is out. I'd love to hear from her about what that was like. Remember, the internet was none too swift in 2001. So the fact that we were doing that to allow people an opportunity to study with us and to take some different courses without actually being physically present in the school was really innovative. And that happened at a time when people didn't believe that distance education was even possible. So we've been innovating, and I have to be honest and say that as disturbing as it was to have to make a decision 2 weeks ago to close the school, the thing I wasn't worried about was whether or not our students' education would continue. Of course, some of our faculty had not been scheduled to teach a distance course this semester, but I would be hard pressed to find a single member of our faculty, adjunct or advising or core faculty, that hasn't taught online. So there was very little changing in technique in terms of getting ready for class. What needed to happen, and what Gabriella and some other folks really worked on, Hugo in particular, was to help them reformulate class materials. And the hardest thing, of course, was to work on the classes that were immersions that we regrettably had to cancel. We made that call, particularly about the Palestine-Israel trip. And thankfully, we did that because not 2 days later, the stories began to come out of people being stranded in Palestine, Israel, because they couldn't leave the country. So we wanted to make sure that something like that didn't happen with our students, and I was really grateful that we made that call. So we do a lot of partnerships with a lot of different kinds of people. It's part of our ethos, I think. One, because we really do believe in the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And I have to say that phrase has been running through my head since the coronavirus crisis began. Because I think that people had managed to talk themselves into this idea that we were all sort of freestanding agents and that we didn't need really to cooperate with people. And I'm not saying everybody did that, but there are big segments of the population in the United States and the world that thinks the most important thing you can do is stand alone. Sometimes that is necessary. But For a long time, we've been talking at the school about how the future of theological education is cooperation and collaboration. And for those of us who are Unitarian Universalists, that is kind of a second nature conversation for us. We talk a lot about the interdependent web. We talk a lot about how people bring certain things to the table, and together we can do more than we can do alone. And I think that that's been a big driver for us in thinking about the forthcoming move to Mills College in Oakland. And I'll talk more about the logistics of the move tomorrow. That's part of our topic. But I want to talk to you about the collaborative drivers that led us to think about Mills. One of the happy accidents when we began thinking about collaborative relationship might we build, in addition to the one we were sort of born into, this iteration of Starr King at the GTU. And as we began to look around, we first thought, well, let's look at schools that have a history as Unitarian schools or schools that were started by Unitarians. There might be something in the DNA of that would, attract them to us and us to them. So we started big. We looked at Stanford because Leland Stanford was a Unitarian. We looked at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, because that was started by a branch of the Elliott family. We looked at a few more places, but none of them were the right match. Their Unitarian traditions and connections were pretty fragile and not necessarily the driving force behind their work. And we didn't need it to be a driving force, but we needed our heritage to be something that a potential partner might honor, right? So we started looking further. And then we were fortunate enough to get an email from Larry Ladd, who many of you in Unitarian Universalism know as far back as his days in LRY. He has been a faithful Unitarian Universalist for his whole life, and a financial advisor to the UUA, a former board chair at Neva Lombard. And we'd asked him to, help us as we began to rethink some things. And he sent an article to me about the strategic partnerships that Mills College was beginning to seek. Mills is in Oakland. I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't live very far from Mills, and so I kind of drove by it every now and then, but I didn't really think much of it. So I read the article and got a chance to get a sense for the president, Beth Hillman, really interesting woman. And I thought, well, why don't I just call her up, talk president to president. So that's what I did. And we had a fantastic time, we had a fantastic conversation. And she started talking about the partnerships that Mills was interested in creating. So if you don't know anything about Mills, it is this beautiful 135-acre campus in East Oakland. And I knew it was big, but I had no idea it was 135 acres. So they actually put me on a golf cart and drove me around. And it's beautiful. It has these incredibly beautiful buildings. It has a farm. It has a lake. It has housing for undergraduates and graduate students. And I just thought, this is gorgeous. It rivals any place that I've been in the Bay Area for beauty. And then I remembered as I was walking through the hallway of the main Mills building and saw the gigantic portrait of Aurelia Henry Reinhardt, that we had a connection, a spiritual connection with Mills College and Starr King. How is that, you might say? Well, Aurelia Henry Reinhardt was the longest serving president of Mills College. She was also one of the original members of the UUA Commission on Appraisal. In fact, she was on the first team of the Commission on Appraisal, along with people like James Luther Adams, who is one of our great theologians of the 20th century. They wrote a very important report for the American Unitarian Association, because this was pre-consolidation. It's called Unitarians Face a New Age. And in it, they outlined the need for rigorous and accountable theological education so that ministers would be trained in a way that people could have confidence in. And really sort of foreshadowed some of the work that Starr King has been doing for a long time. This is not surprising because for a period of years, Aurelia Henry Reinhardt was also a member of the board of Starr King School for the Ministry. So when I realized all these connections, I thought, oh, this is too fabulous. When I began talking to their vice president for strategic advancement, they started talking about this plan they had for optimizing the campus and also to create partnerships among different segments of the community. And by community, they meant the entire East Bay. They were going to be drawing from people and institutions throughout the Bay. So they're looking for workforce partnerships. They're hoping to build affordable housing on some parts of the campus. They really want to be outward facing into the communities of Maxwell Park and the communities of East Oakland. And that is absolutely in keeping with the kind of work that we want to do in terms of the social justice work that is always a driver at Starr King, and the educating to counter oppression work that's foundational to the school. The best compliment I had when we were talking about this was speaking to the provost, who had gone on our website, looked at some of our materials, and talking about the work that we do. And she looked at me and she said, I didn't know there was a school like this. And I kind of laughed, and I said, well, be honest, I didn't really realize Mills was as similar in their goals as we are. Mills College is a women's undergraduate school, but it's a graduate school of education and business that includes all genders. So this allows for the possibility of some really fruitful partnerships. And we're only beginning to look at them because there's a lot to look at. The business school and the education school both have master's levels programs. And it seems to us that there are some natural synergies between the MBA and the master's degree in education and our Master of Arts in Social Change, which allows for people who don't seek ordination but are interested in sacred social change to talk about working together. And to work on projects that can benefit the communities that people serve with a different skill set than we might ordinarily have. There's also the possibility that we might be able to partner with them to create business courses and education courses that would be specifically helpful for our Master of Divinity students. So the possibilities are really endless. And what's wonderful for me is the excitement that the people I've met at Mills have about this forthcoming move for us and this forthcoming partnership. We look forward to finding out who the other partners will be, finding out whether or not there's some synergies in, for example, a healthcare partnership. We're hoping that a hospital or a healthcare group might make a partnership with Mills, and then we might see whether or not we could do a similar kind of partnership, allowing for people who have interest in chaplaincy, for example, to do training in that facility. So everybody's imagination has been inspired at this point, and we're looking forward to doing some really great work together. I'll talk more about the move tomorrow and what that might take. But I just wanted you to know how excited all of us are, not just the Starr King folks and Starr King community, but the Mills community, about what we can do together. And I hope that you will keep paying attention to our new beginnings posting. We haven't posted there for a while, in part because we've been a little preoccupied with the coronavirus, but their work is continuing. And I'll be sure to report when I have new things to talk about. I also want to make sure that I talk with you all about, in an honest way, about what's happening in our world right now and about this larger crisis. I know that we have heard some proclamations from officials about how soon this is going to be over. The idea that the social distancing, stay-at-home orders that many of us have experienced, it's temporary and it won't be long until everything's over. And we'll all go back to life as we know it. And I'm going to be honest and say I don't believe that that's going to happen. I don't believe that things will be over quickly. I actually believe that we will have stages of this. I think that there's a good chance that this will go on for a while, and perhaps even as long as the summer. I don't know yet what that will look like, but I do know that whatever happens, we want to be here. We want to be here for our students. We want to be here for each other. We want to be here for our alums and the community of people who work and study at Starr King. And so I want to say a couple of things to you, especially if you are a person who gives to Starr King. You're going to get a communication from us pretty soon. And what we're saying to you is this. You may find that this disruption has really hit you hard. You may find that you've lost your job or you've been laid off and you don't know when you'll be able to go back to work. Your particular work may have disappeared altogether, or you just may be unsure about what's next. If you've been making a regular contribution to Starr King, we are grateful. We appreciate it. It makes everything we do possible. But we don't want you to lie in bed at night and worry because of this commitment that you've made to us. So if you need to suspend that commitment or you need to delay your gift, please let us know. You'll get an email today talking about a form that you can fill out that asks us to delay your gift. And you don't have to, you're not going to give us a ton of information. It'll just allow us to find your record, and it will include directions from you about how you would like us to treat that gift. Don't hesitate to fill that out. We don't want to be a burden at this very difficult moment. So if it's hard for you, please let us know so that we can take one thing off your plate. I also want to say to those of you who may be more assured, if this is not a problem for you, if you're pretty clear about your career or where your work is going, or it hasn't affected you financially, we're so glad. And we hope that you'll continue to give to Starr King. But I also want to make a special request. If you have the capacity to continue to give, I want to ask you to give a little more right now. I want to ask you to give a little more. Hi, we're back. That was the bazaar. But I'm grateful that you've returned, and I'm grateful to be back online. I can't explain anything about what happened. All of a sudden, everything's gone. So I want to get back to what I was talking about. As I said earlier, please let us know if contributing to Starr King right now is too much of a hardship for you, we want to make life easier for you, and we're happy to suspend that. Just look for the form that you're going to get in the email shortly. But if you're more comfortable, if you have the capacity right now to continue to contribute to Starr King, I want to ask you to think about giving more, especially at this moment when it is so difficult for so many people. If you have the capacity to give more, we would be especially grateful. It's very important to us that Starr King continue to build on its strengths, to reach more students, not just in the master programs that we have, but in our certificate programs, in classes that people find that they would like to take. And every dollar that you have the capacity to increase your gift makes it easier for us to continue our work without being a burden on other faithful givers who are having a hard time right now. I hope that you will consider that. And please know that our hearts and our prayers are with all of you who are listening right now, especially at this really complicated and difficult time. If you're online and you look over on our right, on my right anyway, you'll see a link to Starr King Give Today. And we'll make sure you always have that available to you. We're close to the end of our time, but I want to make sure that if there are any questions for anybody, that I answer them. Jessica rightly says, I'm worried about the reliability of the internet and networks in this time, and so am I. I have noticed that because I've done so much work on Zoom and other platforms since we've been working at home, that the internet has grown progressively slower. And I'm not using a lot of bandwidth, at least I don't think I am. And most of us in the house are not like using Netflix or any of that stuff. So I don't know if this is going to be more difficult as the days and the weeks continue. I only know that I'll do my best to be here. And I will. Hi, Pam. Hi, Jesse. We're almost done for the day. We had a little blip in the internet universe, but we'll be back tomorrow, all things being equal. And I just want to end with a moment of meditation and prayer. Take a deep breath. Great God of many names and one abundant love, we are continuing in our journey through this unknown territory, this viral outbreak that is hurting so many people, if not physically, then mentally and spiritually as well. I ask your blessing and your prayers of comfort to all those who are struggling and suffering right now, not just with the virus, but with all maladies, physical and mental. A time when everyone is so wrapped up in this pandemic, there are people who have other illnesses and whose care may suffer because our healthcare workers are stretched to their limit. I ask that you bless and sustain every single one of those people who are at work in healthcare facilities all around this country and all around this world, some of whom are giving their lives to care for others who are struggling for their life. Please, we ask a special blessing for all those who support us during this pandemic. Every grocery store clerk, every bank teller, every gas station person, every person who's delivering food or the mail or a package. They're afraid too, but they keep going. sometimes because they want to, sometimes because they have to. Let us remember and be reminded of our privilege when we can be at home and work in relative safety. We ask a blessing on all those connected with Starr King, our students, our faculty, our staff. We are grateful to you. Those of you who give to Starr King, we are grateful to you too. May we sustain one another. May we always be reminded of the interdependent web of which we are a part. And may we do our part to ease the suffering and the strain on the people that we encounter, even if it's on our way to the mailbox. We ask these things in the name of all that is holy. Amen. I will see you all tomorrow. I hope that you have a blessed day and that you keep your spirits up. Take good care.